This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV.
Sometimes the most unsettling part of a story, it isn't what happened. It's how fast everyone decided what it meant, how quickly a human life got reduced to a verdict, and how little space was left for context once the judgment felt satisfying. Gosh. Sorry. And today, that's the space where we're sitting in as we look at Amy Winehouse, not as a headline or a cautionary tale, but as a mirror for how easily we confuse reaction with understanding.
Welcome to What the Fork Wednesday, the stories that make you stop, blink twice, and ask yourself how this is real life. Logic has left the building. Let's begin.
Boss be rising, BBTV's igniting, turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel road to the neon dream, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss be rising, sky ain't even the ceiling when she hits go live, everybody feels it.
So, What the Fork Wednesday isn't about spectacle, even though it borrows the language of it. It's about the quiet dissonance that really shows up when you realize how often we decide what a story means before we understand what it actually is. And today sits right in that tension. There are certain lives that become public property in a way that feels kind of subtle at first and then suddenly total, where attention turns into entitlement and observation turns into judgment without anyone ever noticing the shift. And Amy Winehouse lived inside that kind of gaze. What makes her story still uncomfortable isn't that it got messy, it's that the mess became the only thing that people were willing to see. And once that happened, everything else about her stopped being relevant. Context became inconvenient and complexity became annoying. And the idea that a person could be more than their worst moment stopped being interesting. That's the part I want to sit with today. Not to defend, not to accuse, but to notice how quickly we participate in this pattern without realizing we're doing it. We live in a culture that rewards fast takes and clean verdicts, where slowing down feels like weakness and uncertainty really feels like irresponsible, you know? And so we fill the gaps with assumptions because assumptions are easier than curiosity, aren't they? Amy's life didn't unfold in a vacuum, and neither do the smaller versions of the story that play out every day in families, friendships, and workplaces, and online spaces, where someone does something uncomfortable and suddenly that action, it becomes their entire identity. So What the Fork Wednesday exists for that moment, for recognition. When you realize how normal it's become to flatten people into something manageable, something we can label and move past without having to sit with the discomfort of not knowing enough, there's something seductive about judgment because it gives us distance. It lets us believe we're safer and smarter and different, less vulnerable to the same unraveling. But that distance comes at a cost. And the cost is empathy and nuance and the ability to see someone as a whole human being rather than a case study. So with Amy, the public story hardened quickly. And once it did, there was no space left for growth, recovery, or even contradiction, because contradiction would have required people to admit they might have been wrong. That resistance to revisiting our conclusions is something we don't talk enough about. How hard is it to let go of a verdict once we've attached our identity to it? And how uncomfortable it feels to say, maybe I didn't understand that as well as I thought I did. This isn't a show about being right, okay? And it isn't a show about moral high ground. It's a show about patterns that repeat when speed replaces reflection and certainty replaces care. What the Fork Wednesday asks why we're so quick to react and so slow to reconsider, why we're comfortable watching someone unravel as long as it stays entertaining, and why we struggle to hold space for complexity once a narrative has already formed. Today isn't asking you to feel guilty or to change your mind about anything really that you believe in. It's asking you to notice how often judgment feels easier than understanding and how rarely we question that. And that's an instinct. And once it shows up, if there's an edge to this conversation, it's because there should be, not to provoke, but to interpret and to interrupt the habit of deciding in too quickly and moving too easily on past it, especially when the thing we're deciding about is a human life. That's the space we're sitting in today. Not answers, not fixes, just the uncomfortable awareness that sometimes the most what the fork part of a story isn't the chaos itself. It's how confidently we thought we knew what it meant. And we don't, people. We do not. We do not know. I'm telling you. Nobody knows. Seriously. And if you think you do, I'm here to tell you you're not right. I'm sorry, but you're not. So, I do have a letter today, as always. But before we move into this letter, I want to ground us in what Ask a Bee is actually doing in moments like this. So, because this isn't a space where stories are offered up for judgment or resolution, and it isn't a place where we rush to decide who's right or wrong, letters on this show exist because there are experiences that don't fit neatly into opinions, experiences that feel heavier precisely because they've been misunderstood, minimized, reacted to too quickly for too long. What the Fork Wednesday is in particular lives in that uncomfortable middle where something about the situation doesn't sit right, not because it's shocking, but because it exposes how fast we move past complexity in favor of certainty. You got to be sure. Don't react and be sure. The person who wrote this letter isn't asking for a verdict, okay? And they aren't looking to be defended in any way. They're naming what it feels like to exist under a kind of judgment that hardens before anyone pauses long enough to ask what actually is going on. This is a story shaped by observation and reaction and the quiet pressure of knowing that once people decide who you are, it becomes extremely difficult to be seen as anything else. I mean, come on. You go up and you slap somebody in the face on stage at the whatever awards. You think that doesn't cause a problem for the rest of your career? But there are comeback stories. We can't forget. So as you listen, I want you to notice how much of this letter isn't about a single incident or a dramatic moment, but it's about accumulation, the buildup of being watched, interpreted, and reduced over time until the original context gets lost entirely. This is the kind of truth that doesn't arrive cleanly, okay? Because it wasn't created in one moment. It formed slowly through repeated reactions, repeated assumptions, and repeated experiences of feeling flattened by other people's certainty. Ask a Bee doesn't exist to clean these stories up or make them easier to digest. It exists to let them be heard without interruption, without commentary layered on top, and without the pressure to arrive at an answer by the end. Stop pressuring yourself, okay? The reason that matters is because judgment moves fast, but understanding, it doesn't. And when someone finally finds the words to describe what it feels like to live inside that gap, the most respectful thing we can do is slow down enough to listen. That's all we're asking. So this letter isn't meant to prove anything or persuade anyone. It's meant to put language to a feeling many people recognize but rarely say out loud. The feeling of being known only through reaction and never through context. Good morning, Sage. Hi. Thank you, Eric. Glad you're listening. Happy to have you here. Good to see you, Sage. So as we move into it, okay, let this be a pause, not a conclusion, a moment where we sit with someone else's experience without trying to fix it or label it or move past it too quickly, because sometimes the most honest thing that we can offer is simply the space to be heard. Here's your letter.
I'm writing because I'm exhausted from being interpreted instead of understood, and I don't know how to live inside that gap anymore. It feels like no matter what I do, people have already decided who I am, what my intentions are, and what my behavior says about my character, and once they've decided that, nothing I do ever really changes it. I can explain, I can apologize, I can grow, I can try to do better, and somehow all of that just gets folded back into the same story they were already telling about me. What hurts the most isn't criticism itself, it's how fast it arrives and how permanent it feels, like I don't get to be unfinished or complicated or human in the way everyone else is allowed to be. People react to moments in my life as if they're full explanations, and once that happens, I stop being a person to them and start being an example, a warning, or a problem to solve. I've noticed that when I'm struggling, people say they're concerned, but their concern sounds a lot like judgment dressed up as care, and it leaves me feeling watched instead of supported. I'm constantly aware of how I'll be perceived, how things will be taken, how quickly assumptions will be made, and it's made me quiet in ways I don't recognize anymore. I don't talk as much, I don't explain myself as freely, and I feel like I'm always bracing for the next reaction instead of living my life. What scares me is how much of myself I've already edited away just to avoid being misunderstood again. I know I'm not perfect and I'm not asking to be excused for everything I've ever done wrong, but I am asking to be seen as more than the worst version of myself that someone else decided was the most interesting. I want to believe that people are capable of revising their opinions, of slowing down, of allowing space for growth, but lately it feels like once a narrative is set, it becomes more important than the truth of what I'm actually living. I'm tired of feeling like my past is being used as a prophecy for my future, and I don't know how to exist in a world that feels so committed to deciding who I am before I even open my mouth. I guess what I'm really asking is whether it's possible to reclaim yourself once other people think they already know you, and how you keep going when being seen feels more dangerous than being silent. Signed, tired of being reduced to a version of myself I've already outgrown.
So what I want to do first is resist the urge that so many spaces give into immediately, which is to decide what this means. Because the weight of what you're describing, it doesn't come from one moment, one action, or one choice. It comes from accumulation, from living inside other people's reactions long enough that their interpretations start to feel heavier than your own lived reality. When someone is watched or commented on, evaluated, or talked about without ever being truly known, something subtle but corrosive starts to happen. And it isn't just exhaustion, it's erosion, okay? The slow wearing down of your sense of self until you start questioning whether there's room left for you outside of your perceived reality. Pardon me. All righty. I am so related. See? That's that. Me too. Sage, me too. The edging can get rough. You are so true. That you are so right. Absolutely. All of it gets kind of rough when you just get consumed by it, right? Thank you. So what stands out in this letter for me, it's not chaos. It's the pressure of existing under certainty, of knowing what people have already decided about who you are. what your behavior means and what kind of person you must be, often without ever asking you a single honest question. That's the hard part. You don't know me, but ask. I will gladly tell you. And, some people think, oh, well, I can't approach that person and ask them that. That's not true. In fact, it's your responsibility. Don't judge somebody if you don't even know their name. Come on. Yeah, there are people out there that will rub you wrong, right? But that's because you've conditioned yourself in that way to see a person that has this persona in your head that says, okay, that doesn't look like a very nice person, but they could be the nicest person in the world. Seriously. But that kind of environment, it doesn't just limit growth, okay? It actively punishes it. Because once a narrative hardens, any attempt, the need for an outlet to release. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what some of our artists do. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not the right choice for them. And unfortunately for Amy, it wasn't the right choice. But we can't judge that. It's done, it's in the past now. All we can do is reflect on the good parts, because there were some lots. I mean, she was young, but she was in the eye of the public for a very, very long time, as artist time goes, I suppose. But, any attempt to move outside of all this gets interpreted as proof that the narrative was right all along. So there's a specific loneliness in realizing that people are responding to a version of you that lives entirely in their heads, right? A version built from fragments and assumptions and reactions, while the real, complicated, unfinished you remains unseen and uninvited into the conversation. That's where it gets the most difficult for me, I think. But what you're naming here isn't a desire to be excused or absolved. It's a longing to be understood in context. I think a lot of us can agree with that, right? To have someone acknowledge that behavior doesn't exist in a vacuum and that human lives rarely make sense when reduced to snapshots. The problem with judgment culture, whether it shows up online, in families, or in social circles, is that it values speed over truth, clarity over honesty, and definitely conclusions over curiosity. And once that becomes the dominant way people relate to one another, nuance starts to feel like an inconvenience instead of a necessity. Living under that kind of scrutiny teaches you to second guess yourself, not because you don't know who you are, but because you're constantly being told who you should be. Guys, over time, that external noise can drown out your own internal sense of direction. There's also grief in this letter, even if it doesn't announce itself loudly. Grief for possibility of being met with patience instead of projection. Grief for the version of connection where mistakes are part of learning rather than permanent indictments. And the idea that people might be willing to revise their opinions if given the chance, because that happens. Oh, Raz, I'm so sorry, Raz. I missed your answer here, or your comment. Forgive me. Sounds like the letter writer just talks to the wrong kind of people. That is very true too. Here, I'm going to set that up there. That is very true, guys. That is very true. There's a combination of things happening here. And I'm so happy that you can recognize that. Thank you. That's perfect. That is exactly what I'm talking about. So, in that tells me, you're in the right place, because you see what I'm seeing here, and we can discuss this because it's perfect. It's the hardest part, okay, is that once judgment becomes the primary language around you, you start carrying a double burden, not only navigating your own life and choices, but also managing the reactions they'll provoke, anticipating misinterpretations before they happen. And then you have to brace yourself for responses that may never fully reflect your intent, right? That kind of vigilance is exhausting, commended, but exhausting. And it really slowly teaches you to shrink, to explain yourself less, or to perform versions of yourself that feel safer, even when they feel less true. What I want to say clearly is that your discomfort makes sense, not because you've done something unforgivable, but because living without the possibility of being re-seen is deeply destabilizing. I think we all know that's true. Humans are not static, and when we're treated as if we are, it creates a tension that never resolves, because growth requires room to contradict the past, to surprise ourselves, and to move beyond earlier versions of who we were. I'm 54 years old. I've probably got 50 different versions of myself. And each time I've had to move past those. And I've either gone better or worse. And that's just humanity. That's being human, you know? But judgment freezes people in time. And once frozen, every movement feels suspect. There's also something important to notice about how quickly certainty shows up in response to discomfort. Because often what people are reacting to isn't your behavior. It's the unease it stirs in them. It's a selfish reaction. The reminder that life doesn't follow clean rules and that outcomes aren't always predictable. Deciding who someone is allows people to restore a sense of order for themselves, not for you, to reassure themselves that they understand the world well enough to say or stay safe within it. That's not always true, though, is it? That reassurance comes at the expense of empathy. And when you become the object of that process, it can feel dehumanizing, as though your inner life is irrelevant compared to the story people are telling about you. What you're describing doesn't ask for rescue, it asks for recognition, for someone to slow down long enough to admit that they might not have the full picture. And that admission alone can feel like relief. You know, Askaby doesn't promise that people will suddenly become more patient or self-reflective, because systems built on fast judgment don't change quickly or easily, but it does name something that matters. Personally, I think so, which being reduced is not the same as being known, and being talked about is not the same as being understood. No, you are allowed to be more complex than the version of you that circulates in other people's conversations. And you are definitely allowed to outgrow the interpretations that no longer fit. Even if they did, they don't anymore. It's okay to move past that. Give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. The discomfort that you're feeling isn't a sign that you're failing, okay? It's a sign that you're pushing against a narrative that no longer has room for your full humanity. And that tension is often the beginning of clarity, not the end of it. You may not be able to control how quickly others decide, but you can notice when their certainty starts to replace your own self-trust. And that awareness, it matters more than any verdict ever could. This answer doesn't tell you how to fix the situation, okay? Or how to change anyone's mind. That's not what I'm here for. because understanding can't be forced and empathy can't be demanded, but it does affirm that the need to be seen in context is not unreasonable. And the exhaustion that comes from never being granted that space is real. Embrace it and then let it go. Sometimes the most honest response to judgment isn't to argue with it, but to recognize its limits, to understand that fast conclusions say more about the environment they come from than about the person they land on. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's that your story doesn't end where someone else decided it should. And even if others never revise their view, you're still allowed to live beyond that, to grow, to contradict, and to remain unfinished. We remain unfinished until the day we're gone. We learn from the moment that we're conceived. That isn't defiance, it's humanity, and it deserves so much room to breathe. And you have to give it. You have to. You have to give it some kind of room to breathe. So, now that I've given my answer, pardon me, we're going to get into the story of Miss Amy Winehouse. Because I think what I do here is we read these letters and then I find an artist. And the reason I do this is because I feel like if you can take a household name and find some kind of common ground with it, there's healing in that. And I'm hoping that that's what this does. Music is one of the best ways that I know of to assimilate therapy. Okay, I'm going to put it that way. Music is my backbone. I've lived it. I've dreamed it. I've, all those things. I've done all that because that's the way I want my life to be. I want my music to fill it, whether it's somebody that everybody likes or somebody that nobody likes. Like, I'm going to tell y'all right now, Will Smith, he made a mistake, y'all. Get off of it. It's over with. It's past. I don't listen to a person's music and say, oh, well, I can't like them anymore because of their politics. That's not me. And I have eclectic taste. I listen to everything and even opera. Yes, I have. I have a music background. I have over 12 years of private voice lessons. Okay. My life has been about music and I want to share it because I think it's therapy. And I hope, pardon me, I guess I'm going to lose my voice again. Hope not. I hope that you can get something out of this story as well that will be common ground for you. Maybe you don't like Amy Winehouse. Maybe you love her. Regardless of how you've judged her in the past, understand she's human. She was human. She's not now. As far as I'm concerned, she's an angel above, even after how she passed. And we're not going to go there because there's no judgment there. That's not our job. I'm a human. I'm not a higher power. That's not my job. So, as we go to hi again. We all have a story, and none of them are clean. None of them. So don't try and pretend. That's not what we do here either. I have a long past. I have a very long, bad past too. Not all of it mine, but here I am, living my dream and talking about Amy Winehouse, who I absolutely love to hear sing. Wow, that rhymed. I'm getting good at this, y'all. All right, let's stop being so serious and be serious. So Amy's story becomes difficult the moment you stop telling it from the outside and start paying attention to what it must have felt like to live inside a world where being visible meant being evaluated constantly. Kind of like being a YouTube creator, right? Because visibility without protection has a way of turning into something predatory long before anyone names it as such. I don't judge people. Oh, I'm going to put this one up because this is my sage. I don't judge people over politics, religion, sexual gender, nor choice. I observe and make decisions on the nature of their character. Amen. Thank you. That's what we needed to hear. That's the kind of person I want to surround myself with. Okay. Y'all get this right and go watch because he's got some damn good music over there. Love you, Sage. So, what people often forget, I think, my opinion here, I'm not by any means professional. I just, 54 years I've lived a life. But what people often forget is that her earliest public moments weren't framed around chaos at all. They were framed around talent and originality and presence for sure. Goodness. Okay. My phone went off. I hope Boss Man's not out there. I would get in trouble. Ha. See, this is why I keep coming back. Right here. This is why I'm having a good day too. Thank you. So now that my phone has gone off in the middle of a show and Boss Man is not here, at least he's still laughing about it too hard to be able to comment. Oh my goodness. So, and that framing matters because it sets expectations she was never allowed to renegotiate once the narrative shifted. Okay. There is a particular cruelty in how quickly admiration can turn into entitlement, where appreciation quietly becomes permission. And you know what? Permission, it becomes intrusion until the person at the center no longer has the authority to decide how they are seen. So Amy didn't slowly lose privacy in one dramatic moment. It eroded through repetition, through cameras that never stopped rolling, commentary that never paused to ask consent. That, I think, is one of the biggest things that I have a problem with is the consent. Once, the paparazzi starts running after you or whatever, it costs to be famous. Way more than you actually think. And while there are those of us out there that would love the chance to find out, it's not pleasant. It's not. And a growing assumption that because Amy's life was public, her pain was public property too. That's the part people gloss over when they talk about her, which is not cool. This whole story, when they talk about it as if it were inevitable. And we think about that when it comes to stars, right? Especially ones that are very beloved like she was. Because inevitability lets everyone off the hook. It removes responsibility from the systems that profited from her exposure and from the audiences that consumed it without reflection. I mean, what happens when an artist gets tired and the manager doesn't feel like they're making enough money? Stuff happens, right? Poo happens, right? So when someone's struggle unfolds in front of an audience, there's a temptation to believe that watching is the same as understanding. But watching without context is not understanding. It's surveillance. I mean, almost stalkery. And surveillance changes how a person is allowed to exist. Pardon me. So the more her life became something people reacted to, the less space there was for her to simply be. Because every movement, every expression, every pause was interpreted as evidence of something larger, something diagnostic or definitive. That kind of environment, it trains a person to live defensively. and to anticipate reaction before action. Also, to internalize the idea that they are always being read, always being assessed, and rarely being met. What especially is unsettling is how normal this has become, not just for the public, but within the industry around her, where concern was often voiced only after damage was already visible enough to be undeniable, and where intervention was delayed because the machine was still running smoothly. There's point in the stories like this where people ask why someone didn't just step away, didn't just rest, or just choose differently, without acknowledging how difficult it is to step away from a system that has reorganized itself around your output. When your presence sustains livelihoods, schedules, contracts, and expectations, opting out isn't framed as self-preservation. It's framed as failure, irresponsibility, or weakness. And that framing carries enormous pressure. Heavy, heavy pressure. So, oh, yeah, I can't imagine the pressure that she stayed under. I mean, constant pressure that she stayed under. And Amy's struggle wasn't simply about personal demons, it was about existing in a world that rewarded performance while penalizing vulnerability that, well, it celebrated authenticity as long as it remained entertaining. And that grew impatient the moment authenticity became inconvenient. The more people reacted to her, the less room there was for nuance. Because nuance slows consumption, and slowing down was never in the interest of anyone who benefited from the spectacle. So, what's painful about revisiting her story now is recognizing how many warning signs were treated as plot points rather than signals. You know, how often concern was expressed in hindsight instead of action, and how quickly responsibility was shifted onto her as an individual rather than shared by the system surrounding her. It wasn't all about her, but they left it all on her. They really did. This isn't really about absolving anyone or assigning blame neatly either. It's about noticing how environments shape outcomes, how constant judgment can narrow the options available to a person until their choices appear totally reckless when they are actually constrained. Amy's humanity was gradually flattened into a caricature, a cautionary tale people referenced without even having to engage with the complexity of her experience. And you know what? Once that flattening occurred, it became easier to dismiss her pain as predictable rather than preventable. There is something deeply unsettling about how often we narrate stories like hers as though they unfolded in isolation, as though no one was watching, no one was reacting, and no one was benefiting, because that narrative protects us from examining our own role as observers. So when chaos becomes content, empathy becomes optional. And, once empathy is optional, accountability drifts away from the collective and lands squarely on the individual who's already struggling. Amy's story forces us to confront how easily we participate in these dynamics, how quickly we accept simplified explanations because they're easier to hold on to than uncertainty. Tabloids. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about. It's easier to read that, oh, okay, that's why. That's not really why, guys. No. And rarely we question the system that makes certain outcomes more likely while insisting they were unavoidable. So the discomfort is sitting with her story. Sitting with her story doesn't come from shock, okay? It comes from recognition, from seeing how familiar this pattern is in smaller, quieter ways. In everyday lives where people are reduced to moments and judged without context. This first segment isn't meant to retell her life or relive its most painful points. It's meant to slow us down enough to see the conditions that shaped it. Because until we acknowledge how visibility and judgment and entitlement intersect, we'll keep telling the same story and calling it tragedy instead of calling or asking what might have been different if curiosity had lasted longer than the reaction, right? So this is the point where I'm going to take a quick break. You know, my dog's doing the pee-pee dance as usual. Y'all listen to this real cool song. I'll see you in a few.
She came from the quiet storms, built a fire from the ground, turned a whisper to a warning. Now her voice shakes the town. Every setback was a lesson, every doubt became a key, unlocking something bigger. That's the rise of Boss B. When the lights go low, her vision hits high. She built a whole damn network off a promise and a try. Every sunrise, every moment, she's stacking legacy. This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel road to the neon dream, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's the queen of the comeback, the storm in the stream, crafting stories out of heartbeats, making visions out of dreams. Got thunder in the hustle, got a voice that cuts clean. Every mic she touches turns to power unseen. So let brothers spin the numbers, let the views rise slow or fast. Boss B doesn't measure wins by echoes of the past. This moment is a pivot, this season's history. Bow down to the founder of the BBTV dynasty. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dream, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's got fire in the head, it's got truth in the frame, got a heart that won't retire and a gift you can't name. Every loop, every letter, every dream she sets free, it's a love note to the world sign. Boss B. And the world keeps watching as the numbers climb, but she's counting all the moments, not the dollar signs. From the late night grind to the daylight scene, she's building something bigger than the algorithm's dream. Boss B rising, BBTV shining, her story's rewriting, a legacy in real time. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. BBTV, where the stories breathe. her take her place. This is BBTV. This is her grace.
Join Boss B for Ask a Bee Monday through Friday, 12 noon Central Standard Time and Jukebox Journey every Saturday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
All right, y'all. So, what deepens the unease in Amy's story is, I think, how quickly responsibility was individualized once the narrative solidified, right? My screen don't want to do what it's supposed to. I'm learning. Y'all give me a minute. So, once the narrative solidified, okay, because once someone is labeled as the problem, the environment around the it just totally fades conveniently into the background. Thank you, Sage. I do love the song too. I think I did pretty good. So the conversation stopped being about conditions and became about character, right? As if who she was could be summed up by the moments when she was least stable, least protected, least able to advocate for herself. That shift matters because blame narrows, accountability it disperses, and suddenly no one has to ask what role they played in sustaining the pressure, right? The access or the expectations, or even the constant exposure. There's a familiar move that happens in stories like this where concern gets retrofitted after the damage is done. You know, people say they were worried while continuing to consume the spectacle that made worry necessary in the first place. That contradiction is uncomfortable, but because it reveals how easy it is to hold sympathy and entitlement at the same time, to express care without changing behavior, and to believe that watching closely somehow counts as support. Amy's struggle was never hidden. It was hyper visible, and that visibility became a substitute for intervention. As though awareness alone could stand in for protection. Never going to happen. The more her life became public, the less space there was for private reckoning, for quiet recovery, and for the kind of healing that requires distance rather than attention. There's also something deeply misleading about the way inevitability gets assigned in hindsight. The idea that this was always going to end the way it did, because inevitability absolves everyone else of responsibility and frames suffering as destiny rather than outcome. I think we can see that in a lot of situations, not just artists. So that if framing ignores how often opportunities for interruption were present but unacted upon, how many movements existed where slowing down or stepping back or changing expectations could have altered the trajectory. When a system continues to function, even at the expense of a person sustaining it, there's little incentive to intervene, because intervention introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty threatens momentum. I say this, I don't know, as often as I possibly can. Amy's humanity was repeatedly subordinated to productivity, to schedules and appearances. Honestly, to the idea that the show must go on. And once that logic takes hold, well-being becomes negotiable, while output remains non-negotiable. What's particularly unsettling, I can't talk again, is how easily audiences adopt that same logic, measuring worth through performance, while expressing disappointment when performance falters, like when she started slurring her words, as though vulnerability were a breach of contract rather than a signal of need. I'm sorry, when she started slurring, the first thought that came to my head is, it won't be long. And we do that, and that's terrible. And I've tried so hard to stop doing that pretty much ever since this happened with her, because I felt so bad in that moment, because inevitability. That's what the first thing I thought. It won't be long. Inevitability. And that is the worst thing that you can think of for a person. What you should be thinking, and what I should have thought, personally, my opinion, nothing professional here. I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I just thought that. That was awful. I felt so bad for thinking that. And y'all, my faith hit me, and I asked God for forgiveness immediately, because why did I think that? Because that's what I've been trained to do all my life when I watch artists that are obviously inhibited, with their addictions. And let's face it, there's a lot going on there, not just with one artist. A lot of artists live that life, but there are a lot of artists that don't too. And I think they fade more into the background than the artists that actually live those lives. We're talking about the quiet rise and, the chaos rise. They're both very different. And unfortunately, when you choose either or, you have to stick with that, because then there's no consistency and you lose fans. You lose ground in your platform, right? So judgment in this context becomes a form of distancing, a way to reassure ourselves that the outcome, amen. I don't want a preposterous life. I think I said that right. Just a beautiful lady roadie that substitutes as a groupie and life partner. See, there you go. That is not, I'm going to say this loud, okay? That is not a large expectation for your life, Sage. It's not. You can have that, and you know that. I know you know that. You are an amazing person. And that's actually exactly what I'm talking about. People walk into their dreams with this kind of outline for their lives. That's what they want. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that. And personally, I feel like the industry is what takes that away from a lot of people. And as long as you can hold on to that, and then eventually, no, not eventually, inevitably find that, because that's what you want, that's what you're looking for, and that's what you're going to get. That's what you find, because that's what belongs to you. And as long as you keep a hold of that, I know you'll succeed. And because I know a little bit about you, Sage, I know you'll succeed. I know. Because everything happens for a reason, right? Everything. People are put in your path for a reason. God gives you that. God gives you that. And you know what, Sage? my friend, you are blessed. And I know that that is definitely where you're going to find yourself. I know that. I know that. Thank you for being here because you are definitely helping me get my story to the front today. And I just love that you're here. You know that. So, think about it. By the time that a story like this reaches its final shape in public memory, how she passed and how she lived her life before she passed and all that stuff. What's most unsettling isn't what people remember, it's what they stop questioning because judgment has a way of hardening into certainty long before anyone asks whether that certainty is deserved. It's true. Amy's life didn't end with a single defining moment so much as with a long refusal by the world around her to loosen its grip on the story it preferred, a story that felt tidy because it explained discomfort without demanding responsibility, right? Thank you, Sage. Thank you. Honest. One of my very best friends right there, I'll tell you right now, never in my life met this person, but one of my very best friends. And I knew that from day one. Okay. So pardon me, I've got something going on with the hair or something. I don't wear my hair down long or often, but I do it because I feel better when I do. Less headache because I got a lot of this stuff. So anyway, when narratives become fixed, okay, they stop being descriptive and start being prescriptive, telling a person who they are allowed to be and how often or how far they're permitted to change. And once that happens, the future quietly narrows. There's a particular danger, okay, in stories that feel familiar because familiarity breeds confidence. And confidence makes us stop listening, stop checking, stop revisiting what we think we know. As I'm rereading this to you, because of course I wrote this stuff. And yes, it's a script because I have ADHD. Deal with it, people. But here, listen. Because I'm going off script trying to practice my riffing. And I've totally lost what I was talking about anyway. That's called being 54 years old. But with creating content here, okay? Try in Texas. Yep. Sorry. It's the same thing in creating content. Because practice is what gives us more character, right? A year ago, I am so sorry. I'm trying not to cough. A year ago, I did my first video, right? On here. And roll, Sage. And roll. Thank you. So, the first video I ever did, okay, as a creator here on YouTube. It's funny because I tried to be funny. People like to laugh, and it makes me feel good to see other people laugh. And obviously, I can't see it. And I wasn't good at it because there was more negative than positive, which all the videos are still there. If you want to go make fun of me, you go right ahead because that's what you do with comedians or people who think they could do comedy. I'm telling you, it's bad, and I don't even care. Because right now, right here, just look around me. Everything is proven that I have stayed the course and practiced and done better. I can sit here and talk to you like I'm having a conversation with you, instead of shaking like I did the first time I ever went live. And yeah, sure. By the time I finish this show, I'm going to take the deepest breath I've ever taken in my entire life because, yesterday was the last time I did that. It is nerve-wracking. I can guarantee you. You are right, Sage. Humor has always been that best medicine. And that's what I thought too, but you got to be good at it. And it wasn't that I was bad at it, okay? I'll be honest. It's not that I was bad at it. It's just that I wasn't confident with it. That's probably the better thing to say. And thank you, Sage, because you just helped me work that out in my ADHD brain. That's exactly what it was. The confidence. I had none. And I will be honest with you, I don't have a heck of a lot of self-esteem, but that's my own fault. And I am changing that daily by practicing, by being here with you all, by having people like Sage come in and talk to me and have a conversation. I'm learning more to be personable too, right? And relatable. And I think that's why I've been doing it this way. And you know what? I think we're done with the story because we got our point crossed here, right? I feel it. Let's just come on back up here. And we'll just riff the rest of it, which is something else that I'm trying to practice to do. Last night, just to get into something different at the moment too, because here I am off script. ADHD is claiming me again. And that's okay because I should be more organic about this. That's how I've been feeling here lately. So here's what I'm thinking, right? Okay. There's a lot going on stage, and people don't realize how much it takes to go back and do the same thing, So I think that's more the reason why I've decided to start using artists as real world examples in all of this. Okay. These are people that I can also relate to. And I'll be honest with you, there are some times that I don't have a letter for the show. And yes, I do write them myself about myself, or just because I want to be more organic. Or I will write a letter or a story that I read or saw somewhere else. And then I will write the letter myself. And then, yeah, I do shoot it into ChatGPT because you know what? My grammar needs a little work. Life be lifing, and I don't word. Okay. But here's the thing, in every single one of these stories, in everything that I have produced, there is a little bit of me in here. And I think that's true for any artist or creator or producer, right? You put a little bit of yourself or a lot of yourself. I mean, I can tell you in the past week, there's been one letter that was all me. And no, I'm not going to tell you which one because you don't need to know. Stuff happens. Life happens. And that's why I use real artists, okay? Because somewhere out there, these people, number one, come on, they're human. We know this. We know this, right? They're human. So we're here to be human too. And even Mr. Beast, once upon a time, was a creator like me that just, he flipped the switch and he went live. Last night Boss Man and I started something new, okay? And I am so very proud of this and how well it went last night and how we both have the energy to just say, do it. Just press the button and go live. And that's what we did last night. Now, tonight, I will be showing what we did last night. And yes, we were live last night. And yes, it's a replay for tonight. But I will be there if y'all want to come join. I'm sure when Boss Man is not busy, because he was busy, his children, his family comes first. And you know what? That is true with all of us. When I can't be here, he would show up for me. So right now I'm going to show up for him and I, because this is our new show, Grow and Glow Academy. And I am so proud of it and so happy to be a part of it. He is the host. I am the co-host, and we are going to teach everyone how to do YouTube in a more organic way from the very beginning. And oh my gosh, I'm so excited, y'all, because what we've decided to do, he and I both, in teaching you this, is we have a year contract on this, okay? And what we're going to do is we are going to show you how to build a YouTube channel from the very get-go, every step of the way, every second and third Wednesday of the month. 2 classes per month, okay? 24 classes, 24 days that we go in and show you on this particular channel that we're building, how to build it and hopefully get it monetized before the year is out. And then at the end of the year, we're going to give it away completely free. Okay? We're not going to put AdSense in there or any of our credentials for that. So if it does get monetized, it's going to be there for you, not us. You can change everything and it's yours. Just because you stayed here and you learned with us how to make that thing grow. Because here's the thing. You can learn all day long. You can spend 4 months fast tracking your way to monetization, just like me, and not know how to keep this thing monetized, just like me. Get demonetized because you didn't learn that first. We're going to teach you how not to do those things. Because let me tell you, I have been here from day one saying that I'm going to get in there, I'm going to mess it up, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to fix it and show you how I do it. And I'm going to take you with me every step of the way from demonetization to all of it, okay? Y'all come back every second and third Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Central, okay? We're going to do that. Me and Big Jack, I call him Boss Man. He calls me Boss Pete, you know. Me and Big Jack are going to do that. Big Jack and I, use your grammar. I'm totally Texan today. We're going to teach y'all how to do this, and then we're going to hand it over, okay? There is nothing better than that. There's nothing better than having someone teach you and then hand you something for being there. So, y'all come back and see that, please. Now, before I wrap this up, because here I go over my hour again. Yay! Y'all, I don't care. I like going over an hour. I would stay here 2 hours like we almost did last night, having so much fun on Grow and Glow Academy. So y'all please get over there. Y'all come back and watch. You'll see us soon. So a couple of quick things on the screen before I hit that end button. Tuber chat. And let me tell you something. Every time it says Tuber, I just want to scream, and I have not had time to fix that. And Tuber chat, I am very, very sorry. I love you guys so much. I appreciate you, and I just want you to know that, okay? And then BB has a little something to say, just like that sassy little witch does. So just to show you what's running in the background here and what's coming next. Let's let them play. And you know what? I'll be right back for an outro before we close, okay? Here you go with Tuber chat. Tuber. Y'all get over there. I'm telling you, you need this.
Before we roll on, I want to take a second to shout out Tuber Chat, because once again they showed up and held space the way real community does. This channel isn't about noise or numbers chasing, it's about consistency, respect, and actually supporting creators without strings attached. That matters more than people realize. If you're looking for a place that lifts voices instead of talking over them, Tuber Chat is that lane. I appreciate the time, the encouragement, and the steady presence more than I can properly wrap into words. So much love to the Tubber chat crew for doing what you do and doing it the right way.
Okay, see, and now VB.
If you're enjoying this show, subscribing is the easiest way to support what's being built here on BBTV. You'll see the join button right next to subscribe. No pressure, no expectations, just an option for people who want to support the channel in a real way. We're live weekdays at 12 p.m. Central, and each day has its own focus. Same honesty, same voice, just different conversations depending on the day. And if you've got a story you want to share, send it in. Anonymous is always fine.
All right. So, Sage, don't be mad at me. You know I've been there. You know I've watched. Can you remind me again, because it's been a minute since I've been there, which songs they were? Because your female singer, she got the voice. You know, I love her voice. And if I remember the one that she was sitting down on a stool at the beginning, maybe? I think so. That was one of my favorites. Yeah. And Sage, honey, we need to get together and fix this with your channel, because you need to be out there. Your whole little group needs to be big. Okay. But yeah, I think it was that one where she was sitting. I think she was sitting on a stool. I think so. I can't remember. I'm so sorry. It's been a minute, but I promise you, I will go over there and I will leave a message on my favorite. Okay. If we don't get to that. Okay. But so I am going to go ahead and close this out. We're going to leave this here because, well, I guess we're not going to tie this up neatly, because stories like hers, let's see, our female singing, Sarah passed away 2 years ago. Oh my gosh. Sage, I am so sorry to hear that. I really am. Beautiful voice too. Love to hear her sing. My goodness. Well, you know what? It's still my favorite. Okay. And you know what? I think tomorrow with Tuber Chat, yeah, we're going to start shouting out your channel. I thought that's the best thing I could do right now. A daily shout out. And you know what? I'm going to put her up front too. Man, I'm sorry about that, Sage. I didn't realize that. I went over there and the music got me. I wasn't paying attention to nothing else. 25 years. Wow. Wow. So is it you doing the singing now or what? I'm going to have to get over there. I hadn't been there in a minute. That's my bad, and I'm sorry about that. I really am. 25 years. That's a long time, Sage. That's a long time. Well, she's watching over you right now. You know that, right? Yeah. Okay, I keep saying I'm going to close this out, and I'm sorry, but you know what? I'm going to talk to my friend here. But, wow. 25 years. My goodness. Hey, Tuber Chat, there you are. I just ran it. I did. And I hope you didn't see the part where it said Tuber Chat, because AI sucks like that. And I am so sorry. But hey, good to see you. The rest of the band, Johnny, Ed, and myself, just started playing again as a trio. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Tuber. Thank you. Thank you. You're the best. Thank you. All right. Well, you know what? I think that's awesome, Sage. And I'm glad that y'all are starting again. I didn't realize the story. And you know what? I'm proud of y'all for taking it on again. And y'all keep going. And if you ever need a backup singer, you let me know, okay? All right. I need to go ahead and close this out. It is Baby Butt day for llama school, and I am llama teacher, so um I'm gonna get on out of here. But I want to say this, okay? Because WTF Wednesday isn't about deciding who's right or wrong. It's about noticing how quickly we decide at all, how easily we confuse reaction with understanding, and how rarely we give people room to be unfinished. If something in today's conversation stayed with you longer than you expected, let it. Not so you can judge it or solve it, but so you can recognize how familiar this pattern really is, okay? And how often it shows up closer to home than we like to admit. Sometimes the most honest thing we can do is slow down long enough to see what we've been rushing past, to question the certainty we've grown comfortable with. And you know what? To remember that lives don't unfold in verdicts, they unfold in process. We need closure, just the willingness to notice what happens when we replace speed with reflection and certainty with care. We will. Sarah is with us in spirit. Thank you, Miss B. Much love. Stay safe and God bless. We so need to talk soon. You're right. We sure do. We do. And we will. I promise. I promise. All right. All right. I'm going to get out here. I love you guys. Y'all take care. Love you, Sage. We'll talk soon. I promise. Thank you, Tuber Chat. Bye bye.